May 12, 2024. Gaza, a week in genocide. Israel is invading Rafah, the last remaining city in Gaza where over 100,000 have been ordered to flee, many being displaced for the fifth or sixth time now. Over 2 million in Gaza have been utterly displaced. There is nowhere left to go. Gaza has been wiped off the map. The border crossing from Egypt to Rafah, where some fraction of critical aid/supplies were able to get through, was taken over and shut down by Israeli forces earlier this week on Sunday. 7 days later, and still no aid. And no fuel has come through to power Rafah's medical systems, leaving hundreds of injured and sick people for dead. This, in addition to the already many thousands with non-combat related medical needs like heart problems, cancers, and pregnancies. Weaponized, famine sets in across Gaza as innocent Palestinian civilians begin starving to death. There is no food, no water, no fuel, no electricity. All essential infrastructure has been destroyed. People are living on top of one another, and with rising temperatures combined with pollution and waterborne-related diseases spreading. This famine phase in Gaza will likely see a spike in deaths into the thousands, as hundreds of aid supply trucks park helplessly just outside Gaza's borders. U.S. weapons supply to Israel has been paused for now, with the U.S. warning Israel if they do fully invade Rafah that weapons will be cut off. Fact is, Israel already invaded Rafah, and there's no clarity either whatsoever regarding the U.S. warnings. Nothing's qualified or clarified as to what actually crosses the line of invasion, just more PR and subjective, interpretive rhetorical posturing on both U.S. and Israel sides. Netanyahu has already come out in response saying he's intent to attack Rafah to go after Hamas. And again, Israel is already bombing Rafah. Dozens have been killed. Airstrikes are already underway. Israel is completely ignoring the U.S. and the rest of the world, since they've been empowered by the world's sole superpower with full, unconditional financial/weapons support and geopolitical backing. And especially now since the West has made it impossible to criticize Israel for anything without being an anti-Semitic Nazi, as their own PR campaign backfires on them. And also since at this point Israel's already gotten everything it really needed from the U.S. to do what it wanted, which was to destroy Gaza, its people, its infrastructure, and cultural fabric of Palestine, so that there's nothing to come back to, and Israel can claim de facto annexation over Palestinian territory. Attacks on Rafah almost certainly seals the fate of the remaining Israeli hostages, a likely sinister, desired outcome by Israeli officials/Netanyahu, so that hostages don't speak out against their own government's insane carpet bombings and forced starvation in Gaza that has put their own citizens' lives at risk for the past 7 months. All this on the heels of Israel saying, "Oh no, never mind," to Hamas' agreed-upon peace deal earlier this week that would have released all hostages and ended the war. All to keep Israel's genocidal/fake Western, forever war against terror going, despite massive Israeli protests in Tel Aviv to take the peace deal and retrieve the hostages. Also this week, Al Jazeera News was banned and taken off air in Israel, the only international outlet covering the on-the-ground reality inside Gaza. Their Jerusalem news offices were raided and broadcasting equipment seized, as Israel's ongoing media blackout and propaganda efforts continue to skew reality and sculpt narratives that there's no innocence in Gaza. They're all involved, normalizing their genocidal actions daily through disinfo and carefully curated media manipulation, keeping the people of Israel in the dark about the true horrors being committed. Disinformation is a known tactic of war, and a strongly unified allegiance to an archetypal national identity is needed for governments to get things done, often corrupt things in state capitalist society. But it's this corruption of media that lies at the heart of all this that's enabled Israel to normalize their genocidal actions and brainwash its population. Other Western media has been working just as hard, scrambling up narratives projecting anti-Semitic intent onto protesters, smearing their messaging, and making up nonsense about them being violent and disorderly, despite these demonstrations virtually being some of the most peaceful in protest history, and despite very clearly laid out demands: divestment from Israel and immediate ceasefire. Our institutions don't even care to make cohesive sense anymore. The less sense they make, the more effective they are, it seems. They make words meaningless so people can't think, as Orwell said. Western nations have been busy expanding anti-Semitism laws to effectively encompass any criticism/opposition to the state of Israel as anti-Semitic, which is an utter disgrace to Jewish people in and of itself, and perversion of the term to weaponize it for militaristic and imperialistic ends, which seek to silence honest people speaking out against human rights violations. Still, throughout the world, student-led protests continue to bloom in the US, in Amsterdam, in Berlin, and in many other parts. Geared-up riot police are deployed in response. Protesters continue to be arrested, and encampments continue to be broken up. It's been an all-out global, neoliberal establishment crackdown. The media propaganda campaign has been particularly extraordinary, going way beyond the war on terror mantras of the early 2000s. We've seen the whole of politics, congressional responses, the banning of TikTok in the US for being too pro-Palestine, Netanyahu coming out labeling student protesters as Nazis, the riot police crackdowns, the whole song and dance, all the arms of power working in concert to silence the dissent, exposing Western imperialistic war crimes. And yet the majority public is still with these protests and still want to see a ceasefire and support cut off to Israel. The political establishment is very clearly feeling the pressure. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this ridiculous propaganda and legal assault. In this US election year, Biden has massively alienated and hemorrhaged voters for not budging on policy towards Israel and for this whole anti-Semitic defamation nonsense. They know these protests are changing and mobilizing public opinion. They know they can't out-propagandize the more than 43,000 Palestinian civilians lost that people see with their own eyes every day, over 16,000 children, and more than 10,000 women. Going by conservative numbers, as human rights groups can longer accurately assess loss of life in Gaza due to total destruction of everything and mass rubble burying bodies. This whole thing is a massive stain on humanity and on the countries enabling Israel. Everybody sees it. The whole world is standing up for Palestinians on their behalf. And more largely, this is a staining indictment on the entire neoliberal imperialistic regime and is to confront Western imperialist power and control in the Middle East, which is why the establishment's so protective of their narratives. World protest needs to continue to escalate pressure on the US and on respective nations/governments and institutions enabling Israel, with the priority of halting US funding/weaponization to Israel. Israel's admitted none of its military efforts would be possible whatsoever without US support, and that a ceasefire deal is made, eventually leading to Palestinian liberation and sovereignty. This proves extremely difficult since the US political establishment directly colludes with the Israel lobby, where Israel finances American political campaigns in exchange for unconditional geopolitical support. It's the same problem as everything else: the financial capture of society. Israel remains completely rogue and unaccountable to international law. The international system set in place has been effectively ignored. The whole 1948 post-World War's international legal order, the International Security Council, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the supposed backbones of human civilization meant to prevent the very worst from happening to the world, apparently means nothing. The US has abused it all with veto power. Both Israel and the US have ignored its rulings. The international legal/normative framework has been rendered meaningless. If you have enough national superpower, you can gaslight reality and ignore the majority with impunity. It's a wake-up call that we have no real power to protect the world. It's governed by rogue nation-state superpowers in the hands of a 1%, rogue minorities wielding power through representative governments, wealth-concentrating economic systems, and indoctrination/propaganda tools. It all comes back to needing to change the structure of society. We can't develop truly effective international peacekeeping without first changing our corrupt system itself. This means working to de-link private financial power from the basic institutions and functions of society. One structurally strategic area to target is the political/decision-making order itself, eliminating lobbying and dissolving the vested interest pipeline between industry, lobbyists, and politicians, implementing publicly funded elections, so billionaires and corporations can't bribe and, in effect, buy and control the political process. This would set a baseline for fair governance without the problem of corrupting vested financial/imperialistic interests. targeting systemic change to the political order first could be the most initially impactful mechanism for causing further dominoes of systemic change to fall down the line, as we're able to win seats of power to dismantle the mechanisms of power, to unlock a pathway for human rights justice and progress. The Zeitgeist movement, the Venus Project, and the concept of a resource-based economy collectively represent a profound reimagining of societal structures and values. These ideas challenge conventional economic and social paradigms, advocating for a future where humanity's potential is realized through sustainable resource management, technological innovation, and global cooperation. In this essay, we will delve into the principles, goals, and potential implications of these movements, exploring their vision for a more equitable, efficient, and harmonious world. The Zeitgeist movement emerged as a grassroots initiative inspired by the documentary film series Zeitgeist, created by Peter Joseph. Rooted in the belief that systemic change is imperative for addressing pressing global issues such as poverty, environmental degradation, and social inequality, the Zeitgeist movement calls for a shift away from traditional monetary-based economies towards a resource-based economy, RB. At the core of this proposal is the recognition that Earth's finite resources must be managed intelligently and equitably to meet the needs of all inhabitants, both present and future. Central to the Zeitgeist movement's advocacy is the concept of abundance through technological advancement and automation. Proponents argue that advancements in robotics, artificial intelligence, and sustainable energy production can eliminate scarcity and alleviate human labor burdens. In a resource-based economy, goods and services would be accessible to all based on need rather than purchasing power, thus eliminating poverty and fostering societal well-being. Additionally, by prioritizing sustainability and efficiency in resource allocation, environmental degradation can be mitigated, ensuring the preservation of ecosystems and biodiversity. The Venus Project, founded by Jacques Fresco, complements the Zeitgeist movement's vision by providing a comprehensive blueprint for transitioning to a resource-based economy. Drawing upon principles of systems theory, cybernetics, and sustainable design, the Venus Project envisions a global network of technologically integrated cities, referred to as resource-based economies, where automation, renewable energy, and interdisciplinary collaboration facilitate abundance and prosperity. These cities would prioritize education, innovation, and environmental stewardship, fostering a culture of lifelong learning and creative exploration. One of the key tenets of the Venus Project is the redesign of societal institutions to align with the principles of sustainability and human well-being. This includes reimagining education systems to emphasize critical thinking, problem-solving, and ecological literacy, as well as restructuring governance models to prioritize global cooperation and decision-making based on scientific evidence rather than political ideology. By transcending national boundaries and fostering a sense of global citizenship, the Venus Project aims to address systemic issues at their root, laying the foundation for a peaceful and sustainable future. Implementing the principles of the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project poses both challenges and opportunities for humanity. Skeptics may question the feasibility of transitioning to a resource-based economy given entrenched power structures, vested interests, and cultural inertia. Moreover, concerns regarding technological unemployment, privacy rights, and centralized control may arise in the context of automated systems and digital governance. However, proponents argue that the status quo is unsustainable and that radical systemic change is necessary to address existential threats such as climate change, resource depletion, and social unrest. In conclusion, the Zeitgeist movement, the Venus Project, and the concept of a resource-based economy offer a compelling vision for a more equitable, sustainable, and humane world. By challenging prevailing assumptions about economics, governance, and human nature, these movements inspire us to imagine and strive for a future where abundance, cooperation, and ecological harmony prevail. While the road ahead may be fraught with obstacles, The pursuit of such a transformative vision is essential for realizing humanity's full potential and safeguarding the planet for future generations.